I will start the recording. We can get started when you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. You're all very welcome to the information webinar this morning on HRB and Researchfish. We're really excited that you were able to join us today for the next 60 minutes, where we're going to talk to you about HRB's partnership with Researchfish, what Researchfish is, and what this means for you as principal investigators, as well as grant holders, and what you can expect on next steps. So we look forward to an engaging discussion over the next 60 minutes. My name is Vaidehi Mupavarapu. You can call me Veda. It's easier to say and remember. I'm the program manager for monitoring and evaluation in the Research Strategy and Funding Directorate at HRB. The monitoring and evaluation team sit within the INSET team, the International Cooperation Targeted Programs and Evaluation team within RSF. And I've been in this role since January 2023. So I look forward to getting to know all of you over the course of this webinar and over the next few years. Claire, I will now hand over to you for housekeeping. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Vida. And yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things just at the top of the webinar. So this session is being recorded and it'll be circulated to everyone after today, along with the slides. Everyone that's joined is muted, but there is some allocated Q&A time towards the end of this webinar. At the bottom of the screen, you'll notice there's a chat box and there is also a Q&A box. So as we're going through, please feel free to put questions and things in there, and we'll make sure that we cover them towards the end of the webinar. To do a quick introduction to myself, I'm Claire Wooding. I'm the Senior Customer Success Manager from the Researchfish team. So I work with organisations like HRB on their onboarding and implementation and general use of the system to ensure they're getting value and it's going successfully and smoothly. I've been with the organisation about 4 years now. I'm also joined by my colleague Katie Elliott, who I'll hand over to do introductions as
well. Hello, good morning everyone. My name's Katie Elliott. I'm the account executive here at Researchfish, and I worked closely with Vida, Ewan and Katrina since Vida joined in January, walking through their formal assessment of the tool. So I'm here to help answer any questions that you have as well.
Thanks, Katie. And then I'll hand over to Katrina. Did you want to do introductions?
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. And thanks very much to Vida and Ewan for putting this together, and for Claire and Katie to join us today. I'm the head of International Cooperation, Evaluation and Targeted Programs in the HRB. I'll hand over now to Vida.
Thanks, Katrina. So my name is Veda, and I'm program managing the monitoring and evaluation element within RSF. And our aim within the directorate is to embed a culture of monitoring and evaluation within the organization, as well as support researchers and host institutions where possible, as best we can, to demonstrate impact of the work that we fund. Ewan, I'll hand over to you for an introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. Very briefly, I'm Ewan McKay and I'm Project Officer on the evaluation team at HRB.
Excellent. So just to do a quick recap of the agenda, we did circulate one in advance, but the content that's going to be covered during today's session, we've obviously already been through the welcome, introduction and housekeeping. I'll shortly hand over to HRB to cover the introductions and aims. We'll then provide a bit of an overview and introduction to the Researchfish system itself, before covering the HRB specific Researchfish implementation and data collection updates and information. We'll be sure to cover the Researchfish researcher account setup process and the support that's available, before finally moving on to the Q&A and a recap of next steps.
Thanks, Claire. So just to give you a little bit of background of why we're here and why we're doing this webinar and why Researchfish. Everything that we deliver within the Health Research Board is driven by the HRB strategy that goes up to 2025. And a key strategic action for us in the monitoring and evaluation team is Action 1.6 that tasks the evaluation team to measure, monitor, and evaluate the HRB funding portfolio on a regular basis to assess effectiveness, relevance, outcomes, impact, and return on investment. And indeed, all evaluation activities, monitoring and evaluation activities that would have been delivered over the last few years, be it commissioned scheme evaluations or field evaluations, bibliometric analyses, end of grant reporting that some of you may be familiar with, have all stemmed from our strategy where there is an onus on the team to demonstrate impact and return on investment. In 2022, July 2022, the evaluation team within the Health Research Board commissioned an external review to identify international best practice in monitoring and evaluation in partner and comparator health research funding organizations. So the intended aim of that review was very much to identify where the HRB's strengths lie and indeed where our current gaps lie that needed to be addressed vis-a-vis best practice that we'd seen from around the world. And this was done by linking in and doing interviews and focus groups with partner organizations around the world, as well as in-depth consultations with HRB staff as well. The review highlighted gaps in the monitoring and evaluation strategy and presented recommendations and actions in order to address those gaps. And off the back of that report, and as soon as I joined in the role in January 2023, we put together a monitoring and evaluation implementation plan that sought to address some of the gaps highlighted, that sought to build on the strengths that the monitoring and evaluation team have built on over the last few years, and recommended a plan of action. And one of the core challenges that was identified in the external review was this. Health research is complex, it's hugely important, but it's complicated to evaluate. And that's purely because the outputs, outcomes, and impacts that typically generate from health research don't materialize overnight. They're not something that can happen just as soon as funding is delivered or just after the grant has ended. And what this meant for us as an organization was that there was a lack of longitudinal data on HRB funded outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And if you can go to the next slide, Claire. And we were cognizant of this, that with the current monitoring and evaluation systems that we had in place, we were being able to capture data up to 1 year after an HRB award has ended, but really any outputs and any impacts that generated from research that the HRB had funded that generated after the grant had ended, we weren't able to capture. And we realized that that was a missed opportunity, not just for the HRB to communicate and report externally about its impact, but also for researchers. It was a missed opportunity to tell the story of the rich research that they were engaging in, delivering, and developing. And given that one of the primary aims of the monitoring and evaluation team within the Health Research Board is to advocate for more research, advocate for more funding in research, for funding in research in areas that most deserve it, we realized that this was a black box that needed to be addressed, especially when you think about outcomes like impact on policy, impact on practice, further funding leveraged. These are impacts that take time to generate, and there wasn't an opportunity or a mechanism to capture that. And really that recognition brought us to Researchfish. So following a number of exploratory meetings that the HRB team had with Researchfish and a competitive tender process, we commenced our partnership with Researchfish in October 2023. And Researchfish is a tool that assists the HRB to address this problem of longitudinal data, because it's a web-based outcome and impact tracking tool. And essentially, it's going to allow the Health Research Board to generate comparable and consistent data longitudinally, to deliver trend analysis, to develop a data set that is shareable, that is searchable, ensuring that any piece of data that we collect, we're able to use and indeed reuse, and that we're banking on the data to be able to tell the story of our research, and that where possible, pre-population of surveys and automated survey responses are enabled to manage reporting burden for researchers. So that's what brought us to Researchfish, with the intention that we wanted to replace our current end of grant survey process to move us in the direction of longitudinal comprehensive data. So Claire, I'll hand over to you now for background on what Researchfish is.
Thanks, Vida. So in a nutshell, so Researchfish is an online tool, and it's designed to simplify and enhance the way researchers, institutions, and funding organisations collect, manage, and report on research outputs and outcomes. So the way in which this works is that funding organisations enter awards and funding into Researchfish, and then invite PIs and researchers to report the outcomes and outputs of that funding and officially submit it to the funder via the system. The act of submitting information to your funder is confirming that the data that you've entered is accurate, up to date, and correct, and it gives your funder permission to use that information. Also, research organisations can use Researchfish to have visibility of the award details that your funders have entered into the system and the reporting requirements of any researchers and awards based at their organisation, and also have the additional opportunity to access and make use of that reported data as well. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Ewan, thank you. So we've got a brief kind of overview introduction video that should play for you now. Can everyone hear that okay? Because the volume isn't coming through for me.
I can't hear that, Claire.
So there, I'll see if I can share my volume as well. I seem to be having a problem on mine. Might be that if someone else is able to share the presentation.
The research community understand why the funders make.
Okay.
Welcome to Researchfish. If you're an award holder, your funder may have requested you to submit outcomes information to them via the Researchfish platform. Funders decide which awards require Researchfish submission and who is responsible for completing them. We'd like to help the research community understand why funders make this request, as well as provide some tips for getting started. Your Researchfish submission is an opportunity for you to tell the story of your research and how you are making a difference. Funders will use the information you submit to demonstrate and communicate the benefits of supporting research, show the money has been used efficiently and effectively, understand how and why research is effective, and make the best use of a limited funding pot. You will receive an email invitation from your funder, which contains a link that will enable you to log into your account or create a new one. Once you are logged in, you can begin entering the details of any outcomes you wish to report. To make this easier and faster, we have, where possible, pre-populated your award with outcome information. If you've acknowledged your funder an award in your work, then we can automatically import from sources such as Crossref, PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, DataCite, and many others. If you've linked your Researchfish and ORCID accounts, then that helps too. In some cases, your university may also have provided us with some outcome information on your behalf. Once you have input all outcomes you wish to report, you can submit your award to your funder. You can also download your personal portfolio for your own use, such as building your CV. If you have any questions, please contact your funder or the Researchfish support team.
Thanks, Ewan. If you move on to the next slide. So that introduction video, the link to it will be circulated after today, and it's also available on the login page for the Researchfish platform as well. So, and we'll be sure to share it for everyone to refer back to. To touch on a couple of the advantages or benefits to using the Researchfish system. A couple of them were touched on in the video already, but essentially the system aims to streamline reporting for researchers. So as you'll have seen, the system integrates with a number of external data sources so that data can be imported or reused if it exists elsewhere where possible. And this is to aim to reduce the amount of manual entry or repeating information that's already available elsewhere, and where possible, enhance the data as well, if it's possible to pull in metadata or additional information that already exists. So the system also is a one centralized account where you can report across multiple awards and multiple funding organisations. So if you've got more than one award from HRB, you can report on both of them in the same place in the system. If you also have had funding or in future have funding from other funding organisations that use Researchfish, you'll be able to report on everything from one account. In addition to this, the system allows you to reuse output and outcome information once it's entered once. So you can enter a publication and then reuse that publication multiple times on any relevant awards where applicable without having to repeat that information. It's cumulative, so it will build up over time in the system. Any data that you enter in the system or report or submit to your funder, it can be easily exported as well for use elsewhere. So anything at any time throughout the year. So if you want to do an export of your outcomes and outputs, or if you want to do it once you've made a submission, there's plenty of opportunities to do that as well. You can also invite your research team and colleagues to assist you with reporting in the system, so you can give them access to your awards, and there's different permission levels. So if you want to give someone access to be a delegate and act on your behalf across your portfolio, you can do, or just for if there's a specific award that you'd like to give kind of your research team or a co-researcher access to. There's also the opportunity to log into your account and update your data or outcome and output information at any time throughout the year. So you don't have to wait until your funding organisation contacts you to ask you to report and make a submission. If you'd like to, you can keep it up to date. And I'll show you shortly how, if you do link your ORCID profile to your Researchfish account, it can auto-populate. So it allows the data to be automatically pulled in from your ORCID account into your Researchfish profile. So it can be populating throughout the year, and your outputs are ready for when it is time to report. The Researchfish system also operates using what we refer to as the Researchfish common question set, or the common outcome types, which is a standardised 15 output and outcome types that everyone has the opportunity to report against, but they are optional. So you only have to report against those outcome and output types which are relevant for your award. And then finally, research organisations also have the visibility of your award in the system, so they can help you with understanding your reporting requirements and meeting those as well. So as I mentioned, Researchfish has a common question set, or the common outcome and output types. This is an overview of what they are here. Available in the system, there is an outcomes map, which goes into more level of detail about what can be reported against each as a quick reference guide. And then for each of the outcome and output types, there's also individual guidance and help text for each of the sections to help you with reporting. I'm not going to go through every single one of these today, but just to mention that over half of these have some level of interoperability, where the system allows you to pull in information from elsewhere or use lookups, that you're not having to enter everything manually. And I will demonstrate a couple of them on the call today, just so you can see some of that interoperability in action. And then just as well as a reference, this slide is a bit of an overview of just some of our partners and members and organisations that use Researchfish and are part of the community. So just to refer back to the point of, if you do have funding from other funding organisations, you may already have a Researchfish account that you're using to report to them. You can report on your HRB awards from the same place and reuse any of your existing outputs that are in your account already as well. Okay. Before we move on to what will HRB do, did you want me to do a quick demo Vida and Ewan of the just some of the functionality and the interoperability that I spoke about.
Yes, please, Claire. Thanks, Claire.
No problem. Okay. Okay, so is my screen sharing fine? Yeah, brilliant. So this is what the Researchfish system looks like when you first log in. You'll land on your My Awards page, and this is where any awards that you've been listed as the PI of, or any awards where you've been sent an invitation to be a team member or a delegate, will appear on your My Awards page, so in one place across all of your funders. In this case, these are just my test awards for our test organisation. It's also very easy to see which awards are currently in a reporting window, when the reporting is due by, and whether or not the submission is required. Any awards that you hold in the system that aren't due for submission will also appear in the same place, or any awards where you're a research team member or a delegate. So the first thing I just wanted to do a quick demonstration of is once you've set up your Researchfish account or logged in, you can connect your Researchfish profile with your ORCID account, and it's a really quick and simple thing to do, but is hugely beneficial because it automatically imports your ORCID publications into your Researchfish account, and you can set it so that the data refresh goes both ways, so that in future anything you enter into your Researchfish account could also push into your ORCID account as well if it doesn't already exist there. So when you first log in the top right hand corner, you'll see your name, and if you click on there, there's a drop down option, and then there's the option to connect your account to ORCID. When you click on that, all you'll need to do is enter your ORCID credentials and sign in, and you can authorize the access, and it'll give you a recap of the information that it will share with your ORCID account. And then once you have connected your accounts, you can manage this from your My Accounts page, and then you can just update your preferences here. The next thing I just wanted to demonstrate is for any awards that you hold, you can click into the award by clicking on the Go to Award page. And this is where you can see further information about the award and actually do your reporting for that project. So on the right-hand side is where you can manage your research team. So as I mentioned, you can add your colleagues as delegates or team members to give them access to assist with your reporting. So you can do this on the right-hand side here by clicking the Add Delegate or Team Member button. So if you want to add a delegate, this is someone who can act on your behalf on the system and will have access to all of your personal portfolio across all of the awards that you hold in the system. All you need to do is enter their name and email address and send them an invitation from the system. If you'd like to enter a collaborator or a co-researcher, there's more levels of permission that you can set here. So again, you can just enter their details, and then you can select whether or not you'd like to give them access to your personal portfolio in the system, or just a specific award or project. And you can also give them the opportunity to reuse your outputs in their awards to collaborate with them, or if you would like to give them permission to add and contribute outcomes and outputs to awards that are in your name in the system. Okay. And then the final thing I was going to show is just a couple of the outcome entry workflows. So as I mentioned, on the left-hand side is the Researchfish Common Question Set. So that's the overview of those 16 different outcome and output types that you have the opportunity to report against. I'll start with publications because this is one of the quickest outputs to enter. If you have connected your ORCID profile to your Researchfish account and your publications are pulling in from ORCID, anything that's already pulled into your account and is available within your Researchfish personal portfolio will appear in this list here, and you'll be able to see that it's in the personal portfolio. If you'd like to attribute it to the award that you're currently in, all you need to do is toggle the slider, and that makes the connection of that outcome to the award to say that it arose as a result of the funding. So it's a very quick and easy process. If you'd like to enter any new outcomes, so at the top there is always guidance text for whatever outcome type you're in or what you should be reporting and from additional information. You can click the Add New Entry option. And then from here, you can use a number of different sources to pull information in from elsewhere using DOIs or unique identifiers. One of the main ones is using the DOI, but we do have all of these other integrations available as well. So with ORCID directly, PubMed, Web of Science. For today's demo, I'll just focus on the DOI, which uses the crossref to search for the publications. So if you select that you do have a DOI, it allows you to copy and paste up to 100 at a time. So if you have that information available elsewhere, you can do a mass import. In this case, I've got an example. When you click search, it will search through crossref and return any search results. It does also have a URL to it, so you can click the link to double check it's the correct publication, and then select any relevant ones that you'd like to import. And towards the bottom, when adding any new outcomes or outputs, you can also multi-attribute them to any other relevant awards at the same time. So if you'd like to attribute it to 2 awards that you hold or any awards where you're a research team member, you can do that at the same time as adding it to your personal portfolio to speed up the reporting process. And that's how you add it. There is some validation built into the system so that if the publication year is before the start date of the funding, then it does flag that to you for reporting purposes. If you aren't able to find your publication using the imports or the lookup tools, if you don't have a DOI, there is the option to still include the author title or any other author information name to do a secondary search. So even if you don't have a unique identifier or DOI, to still try and find and import your information for you. And if that's you're still not able to find what you're looking for, there is always the option to add it manually. But wherever possible, we try to use the integrations to pull the information on your behalf. And when entering anything manually, there are help texts for individual questions, just for guidance when you're completing it. And any fields with a red asterisk are mandatory to complete, so will just need to be completed in order for you to save the publication or the outcome that you're entering. I'll show a couple more of the outcomes that you can enter. So with the further funding outcome, again, it works in the same way, and the layout of the screen is the same when entering any outcomes. So any existing outcomes in your personal portfolio will appear here, and then you're able to easily slide the toggles to attribute them to any awards that you're working in. For adding a new entry with the further funding search, so we have a database of further funding that you can use to look up any funding that you're looking to enter. And you can, this is a link so you can check to see if the fund is on the list. You can search by any one of these fields that are available here, or you can fill in multiple of the fields to narrow down your search results. So if I wanted to do 2020 and for example, so it will run a search for you and the search results will appear below, so you can look for the piece of further funding. Again, where possible, there's URL, so you can double check it's the correct output that you're looking for. And then once you select the output that you're looking for, it will pull through as much information as possible that's available from elsewhere, and it will flag to you which fields are pulling in from an external source. There still may be 1 or 2 fields that do need your validation, but the majority of this information will pull through for you. So you can enter what kind of funding it is, if it was funded to a consortium. And then if there is a DOI as well available for it, you do have the opportunity to report that as well. And then again, you're able to multi-attribute that outcome to an award at the point of creation. When you're adding it to your personal portfolio, you can attach it to any relevant awards that you hold in your account. Okay. The final outcome that I'll show you how to enter as part of the webinar today is the influence on policy. So as you can see, this is how it looks when you don't have any outcomes of this type in your personal portfolio. So you're starting afresh. So when you click to add a new entry, you can just enter a short testnet, a title for the influence or policy that you're entering. Any questions that have this purple question mark next to them means that there's additional guidance text available to you for when reporting. And then you can just enter the additional information that's required. So again, any fields that have the red asterisk next to them need to be completed. So I'll just do these ones here. Some questions are conditional. So if there are certain options that you select, there might be subsequent questions that you need to answer. And again, you have the opportunity to enter a URL and a DOI for the outcome types when you're entering them. And then you can just click add to portfolio. So at this time, for the influence on policy, it doesn't pull in from an external source, but we're looking to do that in future. But once you've added the output and outcome, it'll appear in your list here so that you can easily attribute it and use on other awards and from your personal portfolio. I will stop sharing, and Vida, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Claire. If we can get the presentation back up, please. Thanks, Ewan. Okay, so that was a whirlwind tour of what the Researchfish platform looks like, a glimpse into the type of functionality that it offers, and hopefully you got a sense of the functionality that exists within the system to try and pre-populate as much of your outcome data as possible. We're conscious that we don't want researchers and their teams to be re-entering the same information over and over again on a yearly basis, and we feel that the automation and the pre-population and the fact that you only enter your outputs once and you're able to report on a output multiple times circumvents that challenge. So hopefully you got a sense of what the offering is. In terms of what the HRB will now plan to do with the Researchfish data, you've all heard about this at the start a little bit, but in terms of the key objectives for us from this move from Researchfish, it's the following. The first is all the data that we collect through the Researchfish platform going forward will go on to inform any program and scheme level evaluations that we deliver, which will inform decisions on the HRB broad funding portfolio in general. The Health Research Board is a public sector organization. There is a requirement for us to demonstrate accountability for any amount of funding that goes out to the community. And we feel Researchfish is a system that will allow us to collect robust enough data that will allow us to communicate the value of the HRB's contribution to the health research ecosystem in Ireland, indeed the PI's and host institutions' contribution to this process. So it gives us an opportunity to really tell our story and to tell it convincingly. And linked to that then is advocating for more research that I talked about, and advocating for research in areas that need it the most, and that's driven by data that PIs are submitting. Data from Researchfish will allow us to allocate resources to schemes and portfolios in an evidence-informed manner, help us make decisions around resources. And finally, it's going to help inform impact stories, as well as provide responses to any information requests that we might receive from the government or any other stakeholders for reporting and compliance requirements. And if we could move to the next one. Yeah, okay, so that was a strategic overview of why we're going with Researchfish and what advantages we think it offers us as an organization, you as researchers, and host institutions as well. But now we're going to talk a little bit about what this means for you operationally. So on a day-to-day basis, what does this change really translate into? The first thing to note is that our move to Researchfish will replace the HRB end of grant survey process. So some of you on the call today may already be familiar with the HRB end of grant process. Some of you may have completed previous end of grant reports for the HRB awards. The end of grant survey process would roll that out annually, and we'd ask awards that have ended to report on outputs and outcomes that have generated from our funding. Researchfish is now going to replace that system. For the HRB end of grant survey process, our question sets were built on the Buxton and Haney payback framework, which is the same framework that Researchfish has built its 15 common outcomes on. So the outcomes and impacts that you will report on Researchfish are the same that you would have reported on through the HRB end of grant survey process. There is a lot of similarity there. Researchfish allows you for more detail, as well as allows you to link to external sources. The difference between Researchfish and the previous end of grant process is that now we're going to ask HRB award holders to complete a Researchfish outcome report annually, and to complete this report up to 5 years after the award has ended. And this goes back to the rationale that we talked about before, that we recognize and we're cognizant of the fact that many of the outcomes and impacts that we're interested in capturing do take time to materialize. And it's to provide that opportunity to researchers and as well as the HRB to capture some of that important information, so we're able to communicate our impact better. Like Claire said, the Researchfish platform is open throughout the year. So as soon as a researcher has set up a Researchfish account, themselves or a member of their team is able to input any information on outputs, outcomes, or impact that has generated from their award. So there is no requirement to report it all in a particular point in time. It's a flat platform that you can use through the year. However, there will be a submission period that will open annually. And essentially what this means is it's a reminder to all researchers to ensure that they've updated their Researchfish account, that any information that's on their Researchfish account has been validated, they're comfortable sharing that level of information on outcomes and outputs, and then within that submission period is when researchers will have to submit their data to the HRB. But input into the platform can happen throughout the year. And like Claire said, there could be years in which you have no outcomes to report on, or you have specific outcomes to report on, but not all 15 outcomes. And that's okay, because you can report on the ones that you have data to capture. So the first HRB Researchfish submission period opens in January 2024 on the 24th of January. We have clearly defined inclusion and exclusion criteria, and based on this, all principal investigators will receive emails from Researchfish to set up their accounts in the next few days. If we could move to the next slide. Thank you. So as I was saying, the first submission period opens on the 24th of January. It's going to stay open for 6 weeks. It closes end of day on the 11th of March. We're very cognizant that this is a new system, that this is a system that PIs and research teams will need support with getting used to, getting onboarded. So I just want to make the point and reassure the community that we are aware of that, we are conscious of that, and we will be here to work with you through that process, and we will be flexible in terms of what it means for your team and for yourself to move to the Researchfish platform. These are our main dates that we want to work with, but we will be flexible in terms of the support that we offer. So I just want to reassure you that we are aware that this is a new system, but once you're onboarded onto the system, you will hopefully see the benefits and the time-saving aspect of it as well. So in terms of the inclusion and exclusion criteria, so any awards that were active on or before the 1st of September 2023 will be asked to report in the sweep in January. So if you hold an award that you know was active as of 1st September 2023, it's likely that you will get an invite to set up a Researchfish account, as well as any awards that have ended since the 1st of January 2019. It's important to note here that for those awards that would have ended previously, that may have submitted an end of grant survey to the HRB previously, we're only asking for an update on the Researchfish platform since your last submission. So there's no need to repeat anything that you've already provided us, but it's an opportunity to provide any updates on outcomes and important impacts that you think have been generated since you last reported to the Health Research Board that you think would be worth capturing. So that's an important point to remember. And finally, I will say that the move to Researchfish is a part of a wider process and wider attempt at the HRB to streamline our reporting. So there are a number of things we're doing within the monitoring and evaluation team to ensure that the reporting process is as lean as possible, and to ensure that any data we collect is being used, that it can be reused, with the intention to manage reporting burden. So, for example, one of the processes that we're looking at and we're paring back and streamlining is the annual progress reporting process. Some of you may be familiar, for example, every year when you submit a scientific progress report to the HRB, there is an entire section that goes into asking PIs to report on any outcomes, significant outcomes that has been generated through their research, any outcomes that should be communicated to the public, etc. And now that we have Researchfish, that's a section that's going to go out of the annual reporting process. So we're going to do we're going to ensure that any reporting that is done isn't duplicated within the HRB reporting requirement. So this is an ongoing process, and you're likely to see more change over the next few months with the different reporting processes. But just to remember that this is a part of our attempt to streamline. Okay, and all right. So Claire, I'll hand back over to you.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so this is actually quite a quick section. In terms of setup, so as Vida has mentioned, over the next couple of days, you'll be sent an invitation to Researchfish from HRB through the system. So that email will come from an admin@researchfish.com email address. So do look out for it. Sometimes they can get caught in a junk or a spam folder. But in that invitation email will be a link that you can use to either set up your new Researchfish account if you haven't had one previously, or you can use it to accept your HRB award invitation into an existing Researchfish account if you have one already for reporting to another funding organisation. So that pulls it into that central account for you. In terms of the support available, I've linked through there to our help and support area. So with the Researchfish system, we aim to be as self-service as possible. So we've got a number of resources that are available, and that is a public-facing link. So you'll be able to access all of our help resources before you have an account and before you're logged into the system as well. So at that link, there is a static user guide. So it covers all of the PI researcher interface and everything you'll need to use the system. We do have tutorial videos available, so individual YouTube tutorials that cover kind of the key processes that you'll need to go through. So things like entering outputs, how to submit, or how to set up your team members and delegates. So all of those broken out into individual videos. There's an invitation help tool. So if once you've been sent your invitation, you can't find it or you need some assistance, that's available in the system as well. We do a weekly training webinar for researchers. So a much more in-depth, detailed walk through the system end to end for you. And so there's a link to register for our weekly training webinars that happen on a Thursday at 11 AM UK time. There's also FAQs that you can use for the system as well, available in the help section. Using the system in terms of technical support, so we've got a couple of options available. Within the platform itself, there's a live chat functionality, so it's available 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. So you can talk to one of our support agents in real time if you're using the system and have any questions. We also have a support help desk that can be reached via the support@researchfish.com email address too. So any queries about using the system, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Other pieces of kind of support that are available in the system that just to touch on. So your funder can also add funder specific guidance text or FAQs and host them on the award page for you when you're reporting. And there you also have access to the R community area in Researchfish, where essentially we host your funder's contact details, so you know where to send any queries related to Researchfish for your funder as well.
Great. So just to finish up on some key dates and next steps before we move on to the questions. So yeah, as Vida said, the HRB Researchfish submission period opens on 24th of January 2024, and it'll be closing on 11th of March 2024. And as I said before, we'll be flexible with people in the first submission period, and if there's any additional help that's needed or support from the HRB. PIs will receive an email from Researchfish for account setup before the 8th of December. So please set up your accept your invite and set up your Researchfish account. We'll also be sending a follow-up email following this call with resources to assist you on account setup. So that includes some of the training materials that Claire was referring to. We'll also be sharing a recording of today's call. And we also have FAQs on the HRB website for some other issues you might be wondering about. We ask you to set up your account and familiarize yourself with the platform and material available in good time, just so you can get used to it, and you can ask us if there's any questions or clarifications or things you need further support on. We will be sending around another notification once the submission period opens in January. And in the meantime, you can reach out to myself and Vida at evaluation@hrb.ie or the Researchfish team at support@researchfish.com. So any questions about grants and what's applicable to you, that goes to us, and any technical questions go to Researchfish. And as mentioned, we have FAQs on our website that we are continually updating as well. So thanks everyone for joining today, and without much ado, we'll get into some of the Q&A. So I see that people have been submitting throughout the talk today. So we'll just go through them one by one. So a first one that I saw from Emma Wallace is asking about if people are on maternity leave during the submission period. So there is allowances for people who are on maternity leave or sick leave or any paternal leave, parental leave. So once you've set up your account and once you've received the follow-up email, we encourage you to reach out to HRB, and we can discuss if there needs to be a pause on submission for a given year. One from the very top was asking about joint funding scheme calls, and asking if first of all asking if it's okay to send on a recording of the webinar to a current PI who's joint funded by HRB. So yeah, we highly encourage that. And Claire, I see that you said that you'd like to answer that question.
Oh, I was just trying to keep track of the
Okay, which one's fair enough.
I think that first query is possibly on the MRCG, or which is now known as the HRB Health Research Charities Institution HRCI Awards. So yes, any PI that has been awarded through the HRCI HRB scheme will need to report to Researchfish, assuming that they fall under those dates that I mentioned. But if you have any other questions and would like to discuss this separately, just feel free to leave us an email at evaluation@hrb.ie, and we can go into more detail if required.
Great. There's a question from Anthony Staines on the development and design of the Researchfish system, and particularly whether it's designed with researchers and tested with a range of researchers as part of the design process. So as mentioned, it is currently in use by a number of research organisations and research funders in the UK. This will be the first time that's implemented with Irish research organisations, although, as mentioned, many research organisations may hold grants from UK funders. But yeah, I don't know, Claire or Katie, if there's anything else to add on to the design and development of Researchfish over the years.
Yep, so that's something that actually we are carrying out and have been carrying out this year, is taking the opportunity to interview researchers, particularly around the UX and the usability of the sites. So we're currently kind of undergoing interviews with a number of researchers that have volunteered themselves and are happy to be contacted by our product and UX team to do sessions so that we can gather their feedback and kind of incorporate that into future design and development decisions as well.
Brilliant. There's a question from Karen as well about adding people's team members to their projects. Can you input all their ORCID IDs so the system continuously gathers multiple inputs, or do they need to be added as team members and input their own details? So I'll pass that to Claire.
Yeah, so you would need to add, if it's in the system as one award, then you would need to, whoever is named as the PI of the award would need to set up those colleagues as team members on the project. The reason being is that obviously if an award's in your name in the system, then granting access to that award is giving them visibility of your outputs and outcomes as well. So we want the PI of the award to have that, be in charge and responsible for making that decision. So they'd need to set them up as team members or delegates. Once that invitation's gone out to them as team members or delegates, they can then connect their ORCID to their own Researchfish account, so it can then start populating with those outputs and outcomes, and they can give you the same permissions so that you can reuse those outputs and outcomes that have populated into their personal portfolio.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Another question. The list of data items that we shared are short-term outcomes, and wondering if there's the possibility for Researchfish to cover a range of impacts that are far later and far more difficult. So just say on this, the outcomes that we shared are a brief overview, but the HRB will be adding new fields over the years to be more and more relevant to the work that we fund and the work that you carry out yourselves as well. And there's also an opportunity to capture qualitative data through the Researchfish platform, so people will be able to report in narrative form as well on any wide-ranging impacts. Vida, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think just to say as well that so the Researchfish outcome questions are based on the Buxton-Haney payback framework for assessing impact of health research, and that's the same framework that we would have used for the HRB end of grant survey as well. So in terms of the high level areas that are covered, there is a lot of similarity there. So we're looking at everything from short-term outputs, things like publications, collaborations, to more medium-term outputs and outcomes like leveraged funding, impact on policy, engagement with public, etc., and then more longer-term outcomes as well. But like Ewan said, if there are key impacts that you feel have not been covered in the 15 Researchfish common outcomes, there is an opportunity to add into a question that's going to ask you to report on what you think was the most important outcome that the project has generated. So there is an opportunity to feedback separately and outside of the 15 outcome sets if you think that it's crucial to communicate.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Vida. There's a question here on clinical trial metrics. Will the database capture clinical trial metrics, or will we continue to use Excel for reporting? So the answer to this is that in the short term, we will keep continuing to monitor clinical trial metrics through Excel reporting. But as Vida said, the introduction to Researchfish is part of a larger scheme of streamlining data collection at HRB. So it's something that we'll be reviewing over next year. Do we get training from HRB, or is it provided from Researchfish? Claire or Vida, do you want to answer that?
So I think the quick answer to that is Researchfish will be providing all training, and this is going to take the form of pre-recorded videos and user guides and other resources that are readily available on the Researchfish website. However, if there is a need to do more training and to facilitate something that's live and that's ongoing, the HRB would be happy to facilitate that. But training of how to use the platform will be delivered by Researchfish. However, when you are completing the outcome question set, the HRB will produce a guidance note for how to complete the Researchfish survey. So you will have input from us in terms of what to include, what to exclude, definitions, and things like that.
Brilliant. There's a question here from someone who submitted end of grant reports in 2019 and 2023 and asking, do they need to submit the same data again to Researchfish?
Yeah, so if you've already submitted an end of grant report through the HRB end of grant reporting process, there's no need to submit the same data. What we do ask you for is any updates that you may want to report on since you last submitted to us in 2019. So, important outcomes and impacts that have generated for your award, say that ended in 2019, in the last few years that you think would be important to report and communicate on, we'd like to capture that through the Researchfish account. So no need to report anything that you have reported previously, but please do submit any updates that have generated since you've last reported.
Brilliant. And there's a related question. Will the HRB be transferring data from previous end of grant reports to Researchfish?
So this is something that we're going to do at our back end. While the data won't move, while it won't move to the Researchfish platform, what we will do is to try and put together the data set that we have from previous HRB end of grant surveys and the data that we're going to collect now through Researchfish. So we're going to try and merge the two data sets as best we can going forward. So there will be that merging at the back end. Again, we're very conscious that we have a lot of rich data that we have collected so far, and it's not our intention to let that go unused. So we're going to build on what we've collected so far and merge as best we can with what we're going to get from Researchfish. But you may not see it on your actual Researchfish platform because it wouldn't have been entered on the platform.
Great. And we have one question with a few parts to it. So first, is the new system linked in any way to HRB's existing grant management system or GEMS? So we'll be using data from GEMS to set up researchers' accounts and fill out their grant details of existing grants. In the future, we'll be working to see how we can streamline the process between GEMS and Researchfish. But Researchfish was specifically selected because it has interoperability with GEMS. So we're hoping that this will streamline things a bit. And next, how will university research offices contribute to the system? So we've already held a webinar last week with host institutions to talk about how they can get involved with Researchfish. As it stands, the free account for host institutions allows them to support researchers in updating outputs and outcomes on the system. However, there is a paid account possibility as well, which gives them further insights and kind of learnings from all the grants that may be managed by one research office. So we're leaving it up to research offices and universities at the moment to decide their level of involvement with the system. But at bare minimum, they will be able to support researchers in flagging when submission periods are coming up and helping in following through with completing submissions. Vida, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I might just pitch in there as well. So we are encouraging all host institutions to sign up to a Researchfish Lite account. It's essentially a free account that a contact point within a host institution in Ireland can be set up on. And essentially what this means is that they will see in the one place all the PIs within their host institution that have an award that Researchfish needs to, data through Researchfish would need to be submitted for. So essentially, it's going to allow them to get an overview of how many PIs have upcoming Researchfish submissions, for what awards, when does submission period open, when does it close, and indeed whether or not the submission was made. So like Ewan said, it's an overview of everything that's going to be required of PIs in that institution, which will hopefully help them support you through the reporting process. And then if they choose to take the paid subscription, there's more functionality available through that.
Right. The next part is, will grant reviewers have access to the system while reviewing grants to see if a grant application builds on an existing award or previous outcomes? So Vida, I'll pass that to you.
So I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that question there, Mohammed. I think so. Are you asking whether grant reviewers will have access to this system to assess new applications? If yes, if that's the question, then I just want to reiterate that we're going to be using Researchfish data to make decisions on scheme level performance and to make decisions on how best to allocate the HRB funding portfolio, but not necessarily to make decisions on individual researchers. So just want to reiterate that. But if you think that answer wasn't clear enough, we'll be happy to pick up and go into more detail in case I misunderstood your question.
Brilliant. And a question for Claire, is the PI's research fish profile publicly available? I.e., if someone looks up a PI on a search engine, will they be able to access the profile on Researchfish?
No, it's not publicly available.
Okay.
It's completely secure.
Brilliant. Will it be possible to transport the information currently on HRB GEMS to Researchfish, including publications? Yeah, so that's something that we mentioned that we'll be working away on the background on the HRB side. For recording impact on policy, how does policyholder corroborate that a piece of research has had an impact on a piece of policy? So I might pass this to Claire, but to say generally that there will be levels of policy impact, including citations in policy documents and policy reports. But for more nebulous stuff, I don't know, Claire, if you can speak to how that can be reported.
So yeah, for recording impact on policy, so it's perfect. It's absolutely fine to record that in the influence on policy section. And then you also, if it's referenced in the publication as well, then it can be captured that way as well.
Brilliant. Are there mandatory outcomes outputs to report on? So we would expect that all researchers would be responding to the standard set of Researchfish questions, 16 outcomes. However, if you do not have relevant outcomes in a specific year, you can just leave it blank. And we acknowledge as well that as people are reporting, a lot of the outcomes will come towards the tail end and possibly after the end of the grant lifecycle. So maybe that year on year, there isn't much to put in, and then it's stuff that you can add in at the end. But what Researchfish gives you the ability to do is if there are things that are cropping up over time that you're able to put it in dribs and drabs instead of having to do one big crush at the end. Fide, is there anything else on that?
Yeah, just to add as well, so apart from the common outcomes, there could be some schemes for which there have been additional questions developed. So say, for example, you are a PI that has worked on a research career scheme. There would be a few questions that you would need to answer that are focused on the research career progress pathway that would be mandatory to answer. So those questions that are mandatory will be marked as mandatory. But from the common outputs and outcomes section, there are no mandatory questions. It's what you think you're best placed to report on. Brilliant.
A question on whether the Researchfish reporting will replace the annual reporting on GEMS. So as mentioned, this will be in addition to annual reporting, but we are trying to reduce any duplication between the two processes. So we will be removing a lot of the outcomes measures that were previously reported into GEMS, and that will be solely through Researchfish going forward. Will the delegate of the PI be able to access training webinars as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, they'll have access to all of the same support resources and everything.
Brilliant. Is it possible to enter data anytime during the year, but 6 weeks window is for the final submission? So yeah, that's correct. People can enter data as they go. How is submission of the financial report handled? So the financial report will still be handled separately at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So the financial report forms part of the annual reporting process for scientific progress. So the original annual report form that many of you would be familiar with has been pared back, and there have been a lot of changes made to avoid any duplication with Researchfish. And then the financial report that usually gets appended to that annual reporting process will remain the same. There are no changes to expect there.
Brilliant. Does a host institution have to set up a Researchfish account? And if yes, why do they need to do this?
We're encouraging host institutions to set up Researchfish accounts because we think it's going to be we think that it might be easy and efficient to see an overview of how many PIs within their institution have a research-fish submission period coming up. However, it's not entirely mandatory for host institutions to do so. So while we would encourage it because we think it would be helpful for host institutions to support PIs as well, if it's not something they want to do, that's okay. But we would encourage, strongly encourage as much as possible to set up an account.
Brilliant. How should we submit details of staff onboarding and the research integrity training that was included in the current reporting system? So this is referring to the annual reports. So those will remain to be collected in the annual reports for the short-term future, and then we'll think about how to best collect them following that. Is ResearchFish linked to the application process for new HRB grants, meaning that your publications, etc., will be automatically sorry, the questions are moving around. Automatically populating your new application submission to cut down on repetition there also. So that functionality isn't there at the moment, but we hope that ResearchFish will be able to help you collect all your outputs into one place that will help for input into the current grant process system. I don't know if anyone has any additionals on that, but no. Okay.
No, I think that's fine, Ewan. Thanks.
Cool. Building capacity is an important impact, including PhDs, students, postdocs, and clinicians for practice. Are they captured in this as well?
Yeah, so if we're looking at schemes that have been funded through the HRB Research Careers portfolio, which are very much focused around building capacity within the different stages of the leadership process, then yes, they would be captured, and there's a few additional questions that we will be asking PIs to submit information on that are tailored to the research career scheme focused on building capacity. However, apart from that, as we said, there is an opportunity to input a narrative on any other key outcomes and impacts that you think has materialized from your grant that you haven't had an opportunity to really illustrate through any of the other common outcomes. You can do that with an open-ended question that will give you that opportunity.
Great. Do we report deliverable outputs here as well, as in the annual report, or just report outputs such as scientific publications, funding, spinouts, etc.?
Yeah, so ResearchFish, all reporting on ResearchFish is at this stage limited to any outputs and outcomes generated from the award, including things like scientific publications, funding, spinouts, collaboration, engagement, policy impact, etc. In terms of progress on scientific deliverables that you would have captured within your application form, we will require an update on scientific progress through the normal annual reporting function. But when that process does kick in next year, you will see that it's a more pared back process, and even with that, we've tried to ensure that there is going to be minimal repetition required of the PI. So the annual report will focus on any scientific progress of your deliverables within, as mentioned, within the application, and ResearchFish is to report on any outputs and outcomes that have generated from your funding.
Brilliant. Another question here on the annual financial reports. So yeah, just to reiterate that it'll still be collected via spreadsheet and submitted via email. Is the submission deadline for grants ended same as that for active grants? So yes, same submission period and deadline for both. And as mentioned, because it's the first year and it's a big change for everyone, there will be a lot of flexibility with regards to people submitting. I've already received a request for HRB report in GEMS due in January. Will this now move to ResearchFish?
I'm not sure what report this is in relation to that you've received a request for. So I think I'm not sure who's asking the question. If you don't mind, we can pick up on this separately, just to gain more clarity on what specific report is being talked about, because it's likely that you you will still need to complete a Researchfish report, and it's not linked to the request that you've just received. But we can discuss offline.
Great. There's a question here on GDPR from Clodagh. GDPR doesn't apply to the UK since Brexit. Researchfish is UK based and would be a data processor. So on that point, the Researchfish servers will be Ireland hosted, and GDPR will apply to that. And then there's a second question: what safeguards does Researchfish have in place to ensure data is not passed on to third parties for any other purposes than intended? So I'll pass that to Claire briefly.
Sorry, Claire, just before you take this one, I also just want to say that an overview of GDPR processes and data compliance, etc., was a big part of the procurement process within the HRB. And so when we did assign the contract to Researchfish, it is with all the caveats that any data sharing is going to be GDPR compliant. So that's very much within our contracts. And Claire, I can hand over to you now for more detail.
Yep, absolutely. So I was just going to add to that is that we're also ISO 27001 certified, which is the preferred international security standard. And all of our kind of privacy policies, cookie policies, terms of use are all linked and available within the Researchfish platform and on our public website. But we'd be happy to provide those links as well when we follow up with the recording and the documents being circulated today. Katie, I don't know whether there's anything else you wanted to add as well from that perspective.
No, I think you've summarised it.
Brilliant. Is this an accessible platform? What accessibility functions are embedded in Researchfish? So Katie or Claire?
Yep. So actually in the past year, we made large UX changes to the system. So it's now compatible with screen readers and to a certain standard of kind of accessibility, which is also included actually within our system accessibility policy, which is linked to. So I'm happy to provide the details of that as well when we follow up today.
Brilliant. Is the 11th March 2024 deadline lining up with the HRB annual return deadline? Savita, I'll pass that to you.
Yeah, so we haven't sent out a notification of the 2024 annual reporting process to PIs and host institutions as yet. But typically in the past, the annual report process would have kicked off in January, usually the 31st January, and stays open to the end of March. So usually the 30th of March every year. So it is likely that we'll follow the same timelines for 2024 as well. So in a way, it does line up with Researchfish reporting. But I just want to reiterate that that there hasn't been a communication or notification that's gone out to the PIs as yet, and that will happen in due course.
Brilliant. So I think we've covered off everything so far that's in the Q&A. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and also for staying on after. We know that your time is valuable and we appreciate you sticking around to listen to us more. So I'll pass over to Vida for any closing statements.
Thanks you, and thanks for facilitating that Q&A, and thanks everyone for all your questions. Hopefully the questions you asked have been tackled. However, if there are any other pressing questions, if there is more clarity required, if we misunderstood any of your questions, please feel free to email us at evaluation@hrb.ie, and we'd be happy to get back to you and clarify. But beyond that, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to now working with you on onboarding you to Researchfish. And I would just say keep an eye out in the next few days for an email from the Researchfish account that will invite you to set up your Researchfish account. Just to say as well, often these emails tend to land in the spam or the junk folder. So just to keep an eye on that as well to make sure that nothing has been missed out. But apart from that, I'd just like to thank you all for your time. Thank you, Claire and Katie, for giving us an overview of Researchfish and the platform and its functionality. And thanks to you and Katrina for joining. Thanks to all of you. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks very much.
Bye.